What's up, everybody? We are back at it again. Do we
Woo!
really want to be here, Jordan?
Way big time. Yeah.
It's a heck of a lot easier to talk about week one when things go well, isn't it?
Somebody set us up the bomb, Cole. That is not week one. I was looking.
You just aged our podcast so badly, but in a way that I love.
It's the only thing that came to mind. You know, it's we forgot to arrange for the easing yourself into summer split schedule that some of our peers are enjoying currently.
Oh man. Yes, schedule is one thing. There are some other problems.
There's a lot going on.
Guys, look, we were thirsting for 100 Thieves LCS. We were wandering through a dry desert, over the dunes, through the slippery sands, with our little head wraps, protecting our bodies from the sun.
Mm-hmm. The blowing sand, etc.
We saw the fountain of energy, the fountain of hope, the fountain of inspiration, and we ran to it. And as we got closer, it evaporated. 'Twas only an oasis.
'Twas a mirage, I think, technically.
Yeah, thanks for correcting my terminology. Oasis would be a good thing to find.
It would be a great thing to find.
'Twas only an oasis, but said oasis, 'twas only a mirage.
Yeah. Yeah. We even, Cole, tried to preempt this moment last week, if you guys were tuned in then, by talking about just like, let's have some fun. Let's enjoy this weekend.
Yeah.
Here's what I think we have gained. Here's the silver lining gift, Cole, that we've been the unwilling recipients of. We know exactly who we are. And it's, I mean, in some
things
ways,
we shouldn't be saying week one, but we are.
It is positive that you don't have to wait until week 5. I mean, this is the same team it was last split. So there is no concern about like, well, maybe they still don't know how to play with each other, or they're still working out the kinks, right? It's all gonna, this is not only the same team it was last split. This is basically the exact same looking team as we saw at the end of the playoffs. The same picks, the same strats, and the same outcome, perhaps, shall we say. So we're kind of jumping right into what I was expecting to have as a conversation in week 4, 5, or 6.
Yeah.
But here we are, Cole. It's week 2.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling a certain kind of way.
Now let's just get one thing out of the way. All right.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a weird time for everybody. Okay. It's things in the world are a little goofy.
Mm-hmm. It's
got to be hard to concentrate. These teams aren't, playing in person and in the studio. It's just weird. We'll start by saying we know. All right. We know that. Having said that, you would think that the team synergy that you mentioned, like keeping the same starting roster together, would mitigate that a little bit. Tonight we will debate how much that actually is the case.
We will.
Should we do this by kicking off with the EG game?
Let's do that. Let's start where this all started.
Well, I gotta say, where it all started wasn't too bad. The starting of this thing was like, well, all right, okay,
I know,
cool.
Yeah, I specifically remember thinking, well, hey, even if we don't win this game, we've had a pretty good showing. We've looked pretty good. That was my early thought.
Yeah, and actually, so I had to remind myself of this. Okay, couching this, the C9 defeat was quite crushing, and it made the whole weekend feel a lot worse. And I had to watch the replay today of the EG game to remind myself exactly how everything went down. It was not as bad as it seemed. It was not as bad, or it is not as bad as I remembered feeling about it. So I think the Cloud9 defeat, like, it was kind of like a, set the rest of the weekend on fire. We lost so bad.
Yeah.
So a hard to remember thing. We were winning this game for about 20 minutes, more or less 20 minutes. There are a couple points where it was kind of even, but like we had at least some kind of lead. We definitely had objective leads for about 20 minutes.
Yeah. 3 dragons.
Yeah. I was thinking, wow, we hit 3-0 on dragons. We got the first turret. Neutrals look pretty good all around. And I can't really figure out like when everything started going wrong. It's like, and I'm getting right into the why I think this game ended up going wrong. To me, it was all around 2 things, and that are closely related. 1, team fighting, and 2, communication, being on the same page. Okay. To me, those 2 things were so terribly bad from the mid game on that like it was just hard to overcome. It didn't look like anybody was really wanting to do the same thing. And that was crazy to watch how those fights played out, because we started losing every fight, every time that we would get into some kind of skirmish. It's like maybe we clean up 1 kill on the back end, but they got an advantage off of every time they saw us from about like 19 minutes on.
Yeah.
And I'm so surprised by that. Maybe I'm being naive, but like it just seemed like we would fight better than we actually did.
I think it's a good observation, because I feel like this is how we won the games we won last split. This is how we won a lot of them. We would keep it together, and then we actually did a pretty good job. Like, think back to some of the games that we won. One of the things that was reliable is that people would play their role pretty well, right? Like, we just very recently talked about Ryoma's Zoe, right?
Yeah.
I remember a conversation I had with you about how like he couldn't miss. This is the inverse of that.
Well,
right?
But it was like, if you remember that, because I thought about that exact conversation. It was like until the playoffs. And the playoffs.
Yeah. Playoffs.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to point that out, because recent memory of Ryoma Zoe is not rosy.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And but I like, this game looks very different if one of their players is always asleep, right? Like,
yeah.
And we've had those Zoe performances from him in the past, specifically last split, where Jizuke shows up and instead of deleting people, he's just snoozing, right? It's a very different type of game. And the fact that he was just missing those shots, right, completely changed the tenor of this. And it made it so that the rest of the team had a pretty hard time organizing around team fights. And I think that's a huge problem. You know, if you remember, thinking back to my optimistic projection for this game, it was kind of based on this idea that Ryoma continued his spring split form and then some.
Yeah.
Like that's what I was really hoping we would see here, was him turning it up a little bit, right? Like, and it's hard to look at this any other way than to say that it steps backwards, which is super discouraging. And I think made all the more so by the fact that we did have this, you know, like it ended on a complete disaster note with C9. So yeah, that's one of the things I saw that just felt like, I mean, if Zoe is a champion where if she's not hitting her skill shots, your team fight idea kind of falls apart.
Yeah. Well, so yes, that was certainly one element of how things happened. I will say that we still were, I think, in a good position to win for about another 5 minutes once things started turning. Like if we would have gotten that Ocean Soul during the fight, you know, things could have been a lot different. But what a weird interaction that was. Do you remember? It was like, I think I did the math and it was like over 3.5 minutes of a dance around the dragon pit. And I think it started off, I wish I had the very beginning of this a little more clear in my mind, but I believe that they kind of were on it first, and then we kind of like moved in and took over the area. And after like a poke battle going back and forth, they kind of like, a couple people based and just like regened and came back.
Right.
Jizuke like burned down blue buff as he comes back, and then they just move in and wipe us. And it was really crazy. It was like such like a drawn out thing that they said, okay, if no one's going to make a move, we're just going to like reset here quickly and have the tools to beat you. And they did. And it was never the same, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was that kind of game. This all feels wrapped up to me. Game 1 and game 2. Like, not that I can't separate them in my mind, but I just, like I said earlier, I feel like I got this accelerated understanding, you know, of how our players are progressing or not.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about some players. Like, I want to say Stunt had a good laning phase, which is not something I typically say to you.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to do this approach too, so I'm glad you do. And can we actually talk about him for a little bit since you brought him up, or do you want to save it? Do you prefer to save it?
And I'm hoping you can tell I feel very torn about even having this part of the conversation, but let's go for it.
To me, I was shocked. I was like, wow, this looks like a different player. He's on the same old champion, but it looked like a different player. Like, he looked pretty intelligent, and he was going in, you know, confidently and at the right time. And he probably was our best performing player in that game.
I can't go that far.
He's at least in the discussion, man. He was doing very well, especially early. Like,
yeah, the laning phase was good. I'll just say it was good. There were a couple trades there. I think if you're a higher skilled player than I am, you'd look at and say, yeah, okay, he got a hook. Like, there's one specifically that I remember. He got a hook. We poured our damage in, and then Yuumi healed and hit the zoomies, and we actually lost the trade, right? So, like, there is nuance to some of those. It still kind of falls into we need to come up with a name for this. You know, like, there's Lee syndrome, and then there's like the Nautilus hook that nobody actually wants syndrome. So I think that, you know, I'm sure that
they call that getting pulled into a team fight. I'll be here all night.
The next however long this goes. So, like, there is an asterisk on some of those, right? Where watching it, I was like, oh man, he caught him. And I was like, maybe they wanted him to catch them. You know, it's the Nautilus delivery unit. So
I don't think it was that bad in this game. I think he was pretty solid, man. I think he was pretty solid.
There were definitely those there were, overall, this was not a game that I left feeling like, well, that cross that one off the list. Like, there were still moments where I left feeling like that was very shaky and all the way up to like not great, you know.
By the way, Swimmers W says the int gauge.
Int gauge. I love that. That's it.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
We have it now.
Thank you.
Yeah. Don't usually read Twitch chat during the pod, but yeah.
Our backup. If we had a producer, they would feed us these lines.
Right. Yeah.
In our ears, so you guys wouldn't know that we're not writing this stuff. But appreciate it, chat. The int gauge. So there are a couple of those, I feel like, and I have not watched specifically enough to say what they are. It's probably not fair, but again, I just feel like where the C9 game went, it completely changes. Like, the nuance of this game in my mind regarding Stunt is gone, and I'm happy to talk about him more here if you'd like, or we can move on to the next thing. Well, look, but I've got more to say.
Credit where credit's due, right? Like, in this game, he was good. He was good in that game. I'm telling you, man. I come out on that side. I'm gonna come down real hard on him later.
Okay. We'll be a united front on that.
Yeah. But yeah. So individual players, right? So are we starting at the bottom and going up? Do you want to talk about Cody or?
Yeah. We talked about Cody like twice in Spring Split, and I feel like you could probably do the same thing here, but let's go for it.
Dude. We've joked about doing this before, but I think we honestly should. We should pre-record our message about Cody Sun and just play it on a VOD every time.
Soundboard it, Cole.
Yeah,
Soundboard
it just needs to be on VOD because it's the same old story, in my opinion. Dude is looking rock solid. He's fine. He's not doing anything insane, but he's not really enabled to do anything insane. And so he's playing, in my opinion, he's playing about as well as you could really want him to, given, you know, the rest of the map and the rest of the players. And I can't, like, it's been this weird space basically for all of 2020 I don't feel like we've gotten a real look into Cody Sun very much because he's just always solid and consistent, but never really like unleashed, right? And
Yeah.
that's sad,
and
man.
recording and playback
right.
next week.
Yeah.
It's sad but true. Like he was 4-1-1 in a game, like what more could you ask,
Yeah.
honestly? And I'm sure if you're being nitpicky, you could say, well, he could do this or that more, but he was on Ezreal, and he died once in a game where we died a lot. Everybody is dying a lot except for him. And he managed to rip off some kills. Like, I'm sure he's part of the reason that we stayed as competitive as we did.
Yeah, he had 4 kills in that game. That was half the kills that we had.
And I remember some team fights like where he was jumping around with Ezreal, getting kills that he had no right to get.
Yeah.
Right? So hats off.
And he only
Cody,
died once. He died one time in a game where they got 20 kills.
Yeah.
He only
someone
died
will say
once.
KDA player, but it's not that. It's not that. He's just like, it kind of feels sometimes like he's the only one on the map who's not giving over easy kills.
Yeah.
Right. And it's always kind of been his thing, except for when he engages or re-engages. But that's still his MO, man. He's still a smart player who knows generally how to get to the point in the game where he can hyper carry if there's a team around him. If anybody is still on the map with him, unfortunately, too often in this one there wasn't.
That doesn't happen.
Right? The people weren't there. And I heard somebody say this week, this is like the least 1v9 meta maybe ever. And I think they were talking about Ssumday. It might have been one of the things.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps it was the deeper dive or something. But anyhow, Cody is not breaking the rule on that, right? Like, he is not the person who is cracked the code and is going to just win every game for us, nor did we think he would be. So
yeah,
that's kind of how I feel about Cody. And yeah.
Well, Ryoma. Now, he is someone that we have our eye on because he was a developmental risk that was taken. You and I, again, just summing up what we've always said, we felt he did okay in spring. He did enough to warrant another split, in our opinion. And we were going to continue to keep our eyes on him and expect improvement for him to justify sticking around and being a part of this team. We didn't get off on that right foot again in that sense. He did not look good in this game.
Nope.
It seemed to be a step backwards on the Ryoma front. Now, I'm not expecting everybody to be in perfect form at the start, but like this was not good.
Yeah.
So that was kind of discouraging.
This was one of the worst I feel like I've seen him. And so again, thinking back to last split, and I recognize that, there were probably a number of people who either weren't there for that conversation or just don't remember it, but we did a super deep dive. We picked apart every play he made, basically every wave of minions. Yeah. And we looked very closely to see what is he actually doing or not doing. And, how could he be doing it better? Is he actually, allowing his opponent to roam too much? Like, cause there's a lot of conversation. I just felt like it was confused. We do not need to do that on this game. Cole. There's no need for us to dissect this because it's very apparent this was not a good game from him. Yeah. And I think that, if you are arguing that it wasn't his fault or that it actually wasn't that bad a game, like, I think you're being dishonest, at least with yourself, and potentially trying to kind of pull the wool over others' eyes. It just wasn't good, man. Like, there's really no other way to put it, which I'm super bummed about. And I'm positive he is too. Like, make no mistake, but you can't even, there's no charitable assessment of this. It just was not a good game.
Yeah, it's interesting because I almost feel like what he did in this game is a microcosm of the whole team, in the sense where, like, I thought really early, like first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, okay, he's going at it. Like, keeping up in CS, winning trades, pushing Jizuke back. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, yeah, maybe he is taking that step forward. But man, after that, there was just not a lot of positive to look at all. He died 6 times. He finished more than 100 CS behind Jizuke.
Got caught out.
He got cut out really, really bad at a really critical time. Like, There's no way around it. And so that's very disappointing.
One thing I don't feel like I have a proper appreciation. I mean, just so there is like this one thing that I saw that was like, oh boy, this feels so much like last split, where Ryoma spends 40 seconds walking to and from a point on the map, right? And doing nothing else, because by the time he either shows up to commit to a fight would be to int, or it's already like we've already lost the trade and we're disengaging, right? And it's like, oh well, back to my lane. So that stuff is hard for me to assess, because I have a hard time saying that's his fault, right? Because it's like, if you don't go, people say, why didn't you go? And if you go and by the time you show up, we've already lost, well, you've wasted your time, right? So it kind of feels like a lose-lose that is a little bit of a unique thing for him to be able to be subjected to as a mid laner. And I do still feel like, either like, okay, let's say you go down for a 2v2 and suddenly the enemy jungler is there. Okay, you got to go because Olaf is not doing it this time. Like, he's not going to be the one to turn this for you. So like, there's some nuance in that stuff, but that has no bearing on his contributions in the fights where he was actually there at the time that they needed him there.
Yeah. And the other thing is I would disagree with that being unique. I mean, every mid laner has to face that.
No. I meant like of the people on the map.
Oh,
like
okay, I got you. A mid laner in general. I was going to say, I don't think that's a unique to Ryoma experience.
No.
The thing is, there are other junglers, or there are other mid laners, like Niski in particular, who will make that count almost every time.
And that's exactly the piece I just don't feel like I get, right? Like, we talked about that a little bit too, where some of those guys they're making it count because they show up and all they need to do is cast one skill shot and hit it. And that's the deciding blow, right? They're not showing up to two of their teammates who are at 120 HP while the other guys are at full. Like, you don't turn that fight. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's just like that's like the one small thing that isn't even a silver lining. It's more just, is this something that we can maybe give him more of a pass on? Like, his effectiveness as a roamer, I think, is in parts more dependent on it, the effectiveness of the people he's roaming towards.
Well, and also if he just had an improved game sense and he could kind of figure out those things 2 seconds sooner, things might be different,
Totally.
And like, really, like a window that small could make a massive difference in roams.
Right. Like, if you show up before we lose the trade and tip it in our favor, there you go. I think a lot of that has to do with how much, and he does play with his lane, at least in this game. And that might be more matchup specific, right? Like, Corki's going to shove the wave, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that as Zoe, because, Paddle Star is only up so often.
Right.
Like you're going to get your wave shoved, and that's kind of, that sets the tone, right? And that certainly was what Jizuka was working with. Any of the package, so he could zoom all around. Like, he had more of a roaming champ, and he roamed, and he was effective. And that, I feel like, is one of the things that started this whole game to fall apart, is Jizuke's power level overall.
It was over 9,000. Meteos. I think that it's been a while since Meteos has looked pretty good, and this weekend did not counter that, and that worries me because of how long he's been playing. Again, this is week one. We'll give the week one disclaimer, but man, it just seems like a while since he's really been super effective. He came out of Optic looking great, and so when we picked him back up for 2020, I was like, man, this could really be something. And there were flashes. I think there were a couple times, like his Gragas Elder Steel against I think Golden Guardians in spring, like, won the game single-handedly. Like, there's been those moments, but on the whole, this hasn't looked so hot, and has always appeared out of sync with Ssumday to me, which is strange given the fact that they played together for a while, before.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I can't really put my finger on what's going on there. I think and this was even called out on the cast, I think during the C9 game, and I don't mean to run all these things together, so I'm sorry for that, but it does seem like there are times where, like, he's making good game decisions, where he's like, all right, like, let me get what I can out of their jungle because X happened, And
Yeah.
I think that's right. Like that feels right to me. But man, just some of the fights that he takes have not looked promising, and he seems to get out jungled fairly often. Out farmed, I should say. And his ganks don't tend to be as effective. So no exception in this game. I mean, I have a hard time pointing to like the good that I saw over this. I mean, he gave over first blood, losing the Rift Herald. What else did he do? I can't remember anything after 5 minutes that felt effective from him, you know?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that's so interesting about sports in general, this game in particular. And in part, it's because we all play, right? And we can all like every jungler will say, this is not his fault, right? Look at the mid lane, look at the support,
Sure.
There's always other people you can look at, which is probably also why the general culture tends to be pretty toxic in solo queue, because you can always point at somebody else. I think you need to a lot of times to try to defend your sanity.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't to say you should do it, folks. But like Olaf is one of those champs where I just feel like as soon as you get behind, your game's over. It's so hard to claw it back, because the whole thing is kind of built on this idea that you get to low health and then you rip through people. If you get to low health and you die because you're behind, like that's tough.
Yeah.
And Darkhuth mentioned this in our Discord, and I spotted as well, but credit where it's due again to Darkhuth for seeing this. The whole reason he died is because Ryoma missed a trouble bubble.
Yeah.
Right. Like he didn't put to sleep the person who needed to be sleeping. And so Meteos just ran right through package drop and burned down. That was another thing, by the way, we didn't say this about Ryoma. There's one fight where he just literally walks around in the package for a while and burns up to death. Just dies.
That's a tiny bit strong, but at the same time, you are not wrong.
There's like no one else is attacking him. Like he's not taking damage from other sources. He's just in the fire and moving around. I was like, wow, that's how you know this is not your game. But that's an aside. So that hurts. That stinks. I don't know what else to say about that other than I'm sure he was mad that bubble didn't hit. But I'm with you, right? He's not. It's hard to see so many games where he feels largely ineffective at best, and kind of contributing to the problem at worst, and say it's probably not on him in some way, right? Like if you got to own it at some point, right? You just got to say it's not like he's not generating leads for us. I think at some point you got to kind of take that mantle, especially if you're a veteran player like who's meant to be doing that for us.
I should point out, and I mentioned it earlier, but when I just said I can't really think of anything after the first 5 minutes, we did get 3-0 on Drake's. Like we had a soul point very quick, and that was great, and I'm glad it happened. We didn't capitalize on it though, so
didn't get that soul.
Man, and this is one of the veteran guys on the team, right? I think Meteos is the de facto leader because of how long he's been in the league, and because he's a fluent English speaker. Like I think Ssumday would probably have more leadership pull if he was super fluent in English, So I think there will probably be an upper bound to his effectiveness as a communicative leader, right? Like on the Rift leader, sure, there's that, but when it comes to like just having that leadership in person and in comms and stuff, it's probably not as strong for him. So a lot of that pressure is going to go to Meteos. And when your leader like that is struggling to be effective, dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. So someday. Where do you want to go on Ssumday? It's so hard. It's so hard to tell. So he didn't look very great to me, but he didn't look atrociously bad. But at the same time, I feel like Kumo was kind of beating him up a little bit, and that's Kumo, right? Like Kumo? Yeah, I mean, did I hear that right? It was Kumo?
Yeah.
Kumo kind of had a pop-off game, in fact. I mean, everybody had a pop-off game, if I'm being honest.
And Sven Skaren didn't. He's 2-4-8.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. Well, but he's still got better Meteos for sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Ssumday, I don't know, man. This is a debate to have in general. Him specifically in this game, I feel like there are a couple things like he misses. Ornn is not a favorable matchup into Aatrox. You're not going to win that brawl. You're not, like, yeah, you have more team fight utility. Great. I think Ssumday does a good job on a champion who's not designed to, like, this is a counter pick. He's not intended to win this lane matchup, and he did a fine job, in my opinion. He actually, like, early on, especially before, it seemed like maybe even before full kits were online, like, he was bullying Aatrox, right, which is pretty impressive. Or actually, I might be thinking ahead to the Licorice match.
Yeah,
matchup.
He did pretty well into Licorice early.
Yeah,
he got some help along the way, but yeah.
So that's my general thought is, I watched Ssumday play. I'm not expecting him to be a 3-0-0 Ornn leaving lane phase, and he wasn't, and I don't feel like he let us down.
Yeah, I think much of the Ssumday conversation is going to be around the same old story of why is he not on a carry champ.
Mm-hmm. Always, this is a perpetual story,
and we'll talk about that. We're gonna hit some general topics once we get through the game. So guys in chat, like, hold on to your carry versus tank champ comments and takes, and we'll be back to that, I promise. But yeah, it just never. It's always the story with him when we're not doing well. It's like he's fine, but it never seems to truly be enough. And whether that's the rest of the map weighing him down, or just something about his style of play. It since basically 2018, there hasn't been like a really good stretch for him. I feel like, like an extended good stretch.
I feel like he had I'm thinking back to like the Lucian game, right? He definitely had pop-off games.
Yeah, and he was second in the voting, right? But it's like it's because they respect that. Like but those games are like, they happen. I don't know. Maybe what I'm trying to express, maybe a better way of saying what I'm trying to express is like, he never seems to be all the way at his potential. I think like we give him a benefit of the doubt because we know how good he can be. But I don't think it's true that he always like looks as good as he can be. Does that make sense? I think that's more accurate about how I feel.
Yeah. How much of that is moderated by the fact that he's on Ornn for you?
Well, the thing about Ornn is that the whole meme around Ornn is, oh, he's a one-shot assassin and a tank and a this and a that, right? Like, the joke is that Ornn has been in a place where he can really do everything for a while. Mm-hmm. And that's, that's more of a meme than anything else, but like, there's some truth to it. And we see him come pretty close. Like, when he gets the brittle procs off, like, I'm surprised at the damage output a lot of the time.
Yeah,
but at the same time,
some of that laning stuff we saw.
It's a 0-kill game, like, it just never goes all the way through. And look, here's just a quick aside. I know the line is, we don't care about kills as much as we care about the gold, right? But when you get kills, you put people off the map for an extended amount of time, right? Like, it does matter to get those, and it's better than just pushing them back for a recall, and you miss out on a gold infusion too. So coming close tends to be frustrating and not as good as you'd want. Like, I don't think you can ignore that.
It feels like your argument here is more to put him on a different champion than for him to play differently. Like,
what do you mean?
The way you're talking about him playing up to his potential, getting kills, that is just not what I think of when I think of Ornn, right? And I'm sure somebody will send me some game results from the LCK or somewhere where it's like, well, this Ornn got 15 kills and he'd only died twice, and that's but So maybe I'm off on this, but I think about this game and even both games and the way he played. And it wasn't like it didn't seem to me like he was misplaying. When you're walking into a team fight where, Jizuke is just raining terror down on you guys, and like he's going to outdamage you every time. It doesn't matter how good you are on Ornn. Like you're not going to knock the other team out before he can knock your team out. That's not what Ornn does, especially if they know exactly where you're coming from because you've sounded the horn. Like you're not sneaking up into the back line when you start the fight with a line that points to your champion. That's just it's not going to work. So I don't know. Like I don't put this on Ssumday. We've seen him take over games. I know he can do it. This is not the champion that we've seen him do it on. So like if it was like, oh dude, we got Ornn for Ssumday, are they crazy? And then he fell flat and just like whang. Then I'd say something's off.
I just want to draw attention to the fact that you just made the perfect classic Mac quack sound somehow. What on earth? It literally sounds like someone played it in my headphones.
I have a soundboard. Cow. It's
all right. So for you old people out there, you might look. Well, all right. Let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about the carry champ versus tank champ.
Let's
really
do
quick.
It. Let's get back into this.
Since that's all we're kind of talking about. Look, I think we went into this a whole lot. I think both years. I think 2018 and 2019 we went into this a whole lot. But one of the times we did, and I think it was last year, we called in a ringer, right? Because we are idiots. And, as you can tell how poorly I'm articulating like my feelings about Ssumday, we're not the people to make these judgments. So we called in Tim, right? You remember we had Tim from Oracle's Elixir on to talk about this specific thing. And he pointed out with statistical backing how the team success was better when Ssumday was playing Ornn, right? When he was playing, I think it was specifically Ornn, but on tank champs in general, right? So I ran with that for a while. Now it's like, we haven't had that conversation in 2020. The team makeup is different. And while I've been giving that response for a long time, it's like, well, previously it bore out that, we played better when he was on tank champs. I think I'm ready to give that another reexamination. But the frequency that we have him playing picks like this, it just feels like there's something that Zix and Papa and Kai and Jungle Juice know that we don't know.
100%.
Like something about it, the frequency that he's playing Ornn, there must be something in scrims that falls apart.
Yeah, totally. I think you have to go into your assessment of a game and the decisions that are made in it. Unless you are expecting that somebody is inept or intentionally trying to lose, you have to expect that whatever they decide to do is their honest bet at what will work best.
Yeah.
You have to start from that point. So while we can all sit here and debate, is he better on carry champs or tanks? What do we think? They have all the scrim data. They have their own in-house analysis supporting their decisions. They feel that their best chance to win is when he's on Ornn. Just like they feel their best chance to win is when Stunt is on Nautilus. Which is a separate conversation we haven't had yet. They're not picking that champion because it is so busted and they can't believe that yet again, for the 5th game in a row, they've let it through. How could this be? So, yeah, they feel like that's their best chance at winning, which probably speaks to the fact that there is some other problem, right? And I think that there's a more nuanced version of this conversation of carry champ versus tank champ.
Mm-hmm.
And I think tanks have a role, right? Let's not pretend that tanks aren't a viable.
Yeah.
It's not like he's doing some goofy dark tech. It's tanks are champs too. But here's the thing. There is some the nuance to it is, are you shoring up a weakness or are you emphasizing a strength? And I get the feeling that they're shoring up a weakness.
Yeah.
And they feel like they need to put him on this champion to make up for something else somewhere else on the map. And that's probably where they're coming from.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. So the question is, do you, after a while of that, just want to roll the dice on the strength side of it instead of shoring up the weakness, like the Lucian game, right?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's swinging for the fences, right? Like,
well, how long do we get in the split before we swing for the fences? That's not a question we'll answer right now, but I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah, that's the question.
Well, we've talked about this stuff for actually longer than I thought. Let's go into C9, which should be a quick conversation. Jordan, my take on this game was that it was bad, and it felt bad, and they're good, and we're not as good, and so they won hard, and they won quick. Any comments?
That's it. That's good. Let's go to the next. That's the hard-hitting analysis people tune in for.
I like your so you guys can never see the show notes that we have between each other. This is what Jordan said. This is what he called this game. All right. He said the C9 special, a loss so devastating you re-examine everything you thought you knew.
Unfortunately, I think this is what commonly follows a game against C9. It's soul searching, it's tearing down your idols, all of these things.
Oh, speaking of tearing down your idols, okay, the one topic specific to this that I want to hit, I alluded to last split. I am wondering about this Licorice versus Ssumday thing. For a long time, we've gone back and forth, be like, well, like we think Ssumday is better than Licorice, or you know, a lot of people think Licorice is better than Ssumday. Oh, well, Licorice won the voting. Well, Ssumday was second, and like, oh, what if Ssumday had a better team?
Yeah.
You know, Licorice has a sick team. I'm getting to the point where I'm not sure this can even be an argument anymore. I will say, Ssumday got a kill on Licorice in this game. Okay, and that kill, while it did come off a gank from Meteos, it was set up by a Ssumday individual play, right? Where he got the flash out. So he earned that kill. I'm going to give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, I mean, Licorice was doing Licorice things. And like, I've seen so many, like, actually going into every C9 game, basically since Licorice was playing, I've always felt like, all right, Ssumday's going to show him. Like, Ssumday will get the outplay on him, and then we can kind of flex that, and that'll be the bright spot for the game. Man, that almost never goes that way for me. And I've seen so many games where it seems like Licorice is the stronger player that, like, even though I love Ssumday, and he's my favorite LCS player, I'm not sure I can really, like, in earnest defend him over Licorice anymore. I'm just not sure. Jordan,
I think it's fair.
Am I overreacting because I'm big sad?
No, I mean, this is exactly where this conversation was. Remember, okay, at the end of last split, we went into playoffs thinking like, all right, here's his chance. You know, even though this team is historically good and we have basically zero chance of actually winning the series, Ssumday is going to have, you know, this is his chance to show everybody. And it just didn't go his way. Yeah. Like there's no other really way to summarize that other than to say Licorice got the better of Ssumday in that. And this is kind of a continuation of it. So I still do hold on to this, and I probably hold on to it more than I should, but like, we know that Ssumday can outplay Licorice, right? He did get that kill at the start of it.
Yeah.
And he earned it. But like, I'm thinking back to, you know, the last time they played, probably in the playoff series, like 1v1s in the sideline. I think he lost a couple of those.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of people in chat right now are talking about the team difference, which is true. Like, don't get me wrong. That is true. But like, even
1v1
or 1v1 early game, this happens. It's not infrequent.
And even mid, like when Ssumday is on split push duty, Licorice has shown he can show up and not only like delay him, he can just outright win a fight.
Yeah.
Like, Licorice is that type of dude. And, team, of course, plays into that, right? Well, he's got 8 assists because his team is just racking up to whatever. That's always part of it, right? Like, every 1v1 you decide to take is a decision you make, and you don't take those if you don't think you can win, right? Like, so I look at that as just Licorice is getting the better of those.
Yeah.
No 1v1 is ever in practice tool, right? Like, it's not out of the context of the game you're playing. So I don't think you can use that as an excuse to say, well, he had his team propping him up. It's like, 1v1 me, bro, and then he wins, and that's how you tally that, right? So of late, Licorice has gotten the better of that. It's tough. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. It is.
It's seeming to be like that. Now, chat, I have ulterior motive for talking about this. You know quite well that I tend to curse us with whatever I say, and the opposite happens. So I am knowingly invoking my curse right now and coming out and say, it feels like Licorice, like, I can't justify like voting Ssumday over Licorice for like first team all pro or something. Like, to me, I don't think I can have that conversation right now anymore. So something's going to have to change along those lines. And I hope the thing that changes is that my curse kicks in for what I say and the opposite happens. All right. So I just want to put that out there. I love Ssumday. Don't take this as me, preaching out against our star player, because I love him and he's the best. I'm glad we have him through 2022. But yeah, I hate watching him play against Licorice, and I hate watching him play against Impact. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'm not like, here, this is a segue. Ready for a segue? Cole, I'm not at the point with Ssumday where I feel like he can't regain his position of dominance. Of course, I still believe that Ssumday can get the better of Licorice. Like, every time we watch a game with them, I go into it thinking, this will be interesting because I am excited to see if he can get the better of Licorice. And the answer is no, he didn't this time. But I'm in no way at the point where I'd say, and I think that that's just the way it will be. But Cole, I think that's the point that I've reached with Stunt. I think it is. And let me talk about this
all right
a little bit. One, I'll just say, as a human being, it feels a little bit weird to me that we, as a hobby, discuss whether or not someone should keep their job. That feels weird. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah.
Good looks. I grapple with that sometimes because I like all of these people and I wish them well. And that doesn't really jive with me when I say that I think it's time to call it, because what that means, inherently, is that I think somebody should relieve this guy of his job, which feels bad.
Yeah, for sure.
Put out there. So I don't say it with any flippancy, but I think the point that I'm at here is the C9 game, they're always hard against C9. And what you always hope for is that you do yourself proud. And this is one of the more egregious examples of where the casters who are professionals and maintain an air of, neutrality in many ways and at many times, and not always, right? It's not as buttoned up as some broadcasts,
sure,
thankfully, but they couldn't not react to some of these engages that we saw. It was hard to watch, and it was just shocking. It was honestly shocking, especially after that strong laning phase we saw. It's like, for whatever reason, he decided to abandon his lane and set up shop in the river and just hook his way into some really, really bad situations. I will pause unless you want me to keep going.
No, keep going. Because I mean, okay. I can't. It's hard for me to say anything counter to what you're saying, and I get it too. That it's not fun to say those things, because it's a real person, and you are saying that they should be relieved from their work or whatever. But that's kind of what we do here, and that's nothing personal. Yeah, it's nothing.
Sports is a very strange thing if you really think about it. It's a bunch of strangers, saying like, get him out of there. He's a dude too.
Yeah.
So the reason I think I'm at that point where I just feel like it's not going to happen, there are a couple things. More Nautilus, right? And like we talked about, I don't need to spend a long time on this, but it's every game in the TSM series that we ended up losing.
Yeah. Let's. I pulled up his Leaguepedia really quick. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games straight of Nautilus. Though, as you mentioned, 5 of those were in the TSM series. So, his last 7 have been Nautilus. He didn't play him for the C9 series at all. And then the last, let's see, 1, 2, 3 games of the split. But if you keep backing up, then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of 11 games before that he played Nautilus.
That's a lot of Nautilus.
That is a lot of Nautilus. That is
not a lot of dimensions in what you need to prepare for if you're playing against Stunt right now. So this is his best champ. And this is the performance that we got. That is incredibly concerning to me. And I think what that tells me is this is what we should expect. I don't think it's going to change. I think we've seen Stunt at his best. I don't think we're going to see him better than we've seen him up to this point. And I just feel like the best version of Stunt that we've seen is not good enough to justify continuing to try to make it work. I just don't see it happening, man.
It really says, let's give him the Purple Heart. If Rec League awards applied to LCS, we would certainly give Stunt the Purple Heart and remove him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hate doing that week 1, especially because he had a pretty good game 1, man. Yeah. But the totality of what you're saying is hard to ignore. And I've always emphasized this is he's not like a new player. He's been around. He's been on a lot of teams. He's had a lot of like places to play. And no one's really found that opportunity with him. I mean, we've given him more time than anyone else, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I'm aware, on the LCS level. So, I would. That was the change that I would have made in the off season if someone had been available in the right way. Now, a lot of people in chat are mentioning Poom, and a lot of people have brought up Poom. First of all, we have Breezy on Academy before we had Poom. So there is an alternative there. Poom does look pretty good. He didn't actually have a good first game in Academy, but he had a great second game, and he's destroyed with 100 Next. At this point, you have to weigh what it does to the rest of the team and what it does to Poom himself if you want to consider throwing him in. But that's all moot point because right now we've been hearing he cannot get a visa to come into the country because he's in Canada. Mm-hmm. So until that changes, that's like, that's going to be a problem.
These issues.
So it just feels like we're stuck and the team has been resigned to just trying to keep this in place while something else materializes. And that is never the position you want to be. Like, I would rather be able to take a chance that is 10% chance of success than to just not be able to do anything.
Right. Like we talked last week before, preseason pod, right? Okay. Imagine that we're like within striking distance of Worlds and we need to make a change. Do you make that change and risk Worlds, or do you keep a status quo and maybe make Worlds, maybe not make Worlds? Kind of like, do you swing for the fences? It feels to me like it would be the ultimate consolation prize, right? Yeah. And there would be no end to the amount of people who would say they don't belong here. What are they doing here? Why is LCS sending the not top 3 teams again? And I think if we sent this roster, like, imagine Stunt playing at Worlds. He would be so exploitable with basically a champ to play, right? Like, it feels nobody's banning Nautilus. Nobody's banning.
They're
Nautilus.
Like, all right, cool. Don't need to do anything.
Keep giving it to him. So it just feels to me like even if we made it to Worlds with this exact roster, it would be. I think it'd be painful to watch.
It would feed the meme show for sure, but at the same time, you made it to Worlds, so that I think that's better than just not going. As far as and guys, just so you know, we don't usually do much Twitch chat interaction and questions straight out of Twitch chat. We do that before the show. But there was a question of like, can we start this poorly and then recover and like have a good back half of the split? It's like, yeah, obviously we can. We did that last split.
Yeah.
You know, like,
and
there is like a way to come out better. But what our worry is A, that we feel like we overachieved in spring, and B, even if we can have a better like back half of the split or whatever, or we just get through a rough start, it's like you still have to get top 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the top, like C9, no one is touching them. I personally think Liquid's going to be really good, and whoever else it is, it's going to be difficult. So it's like you gotta be good. You can't just be like, all right.
Yeah. And I mean, the split's not over. Like guys, it is still week 1. The only conclusion I've reached, not is that our split is over. That's please don't hear that. What I am realizing myself is that I feel like I've reached the point where I have enough information about Stunt to say I do not see him being the future of the support position in our organization. And I think when you realize that, you have to start the process of thinking about what's next. And unfortunately, I don't think there is an easy answer. This is, and we should know by now, this is always going to be the answer. There's never an easy solve, because if it was easy to solve, they already solved it. So like, we don't need to spend a lot of time. We won't spend a lot of time talking about what they could or should do right now. But for me, if I were on staff, I'd say it's time to start working on whatever the other plans are. And maybe that means more scrim time with the academy guys. Maybe it means we start sending some DMs to people about potential trades, like, you name it. Maybe some of our academy guys, Prismal is looking really good. Maybe he's a potential trade. Like, the mechanism needs to start. It needs to be in motion, because fast forward 7 weeks, if we're still playing Stunt on Nautilus every game, it's going to be hard for me to be excited. Like, I'm going to have a really hard time thinking that we've got a good shot at postseason.
Yeah. Well, we did exactly what I didn't really want to do, which was like focus on the like long-term building of the team, because it is week 1. But like, the problem is we're just getting so much of like a flashback to what we were before, and
it feels different this time, Cole, because it's, to your point, it feels a little bit more like this is week end of spring +1, right? Like, it's the same information that we had from before.
Yeah.
We don't need to do any of the trial period where it's like, let it go and see how it goes. Like, you don't want to act rashly. This is different because all the pieces are the same.
Yeah. Wow, we're going long, but let's do some general things really quick. I mentioned this earlier, but I really do think that first 5 minutes of both of these games were fine. Like, like the immediate early game plans seemed to be all right to me. And somewhere along the transition from early game to mid game, like, we just lose the ball. I don't know what's going on there, but it seems like whatever the mindset is when everybody first gets in there, it's like, good. I'm going to be watching for this. I'm glad that there is that feeling, because it's better than like, oh, well, no one knew what we were doing the whole time. Like, that's definitely not what you want. But I'm going to be watching to see if that's like a thing for us this split.
Right.
Do
we start strong and then fade fast, or
yeah.
On
a sort of related note, I said this last split too, but it kind of feels like sometimes we have a worse meta read than our opponents do in general. And I don't say that to say we lose every draft or anything like that, but there are some picks that get pulled out against us consistently that, like, it seems like, why aren't we playing these? And it's probably a champ pool limitation or something, but maybe it's a meta read as well. But the thing with it is, like, if it was just champ pool, wouldn't we prevent some of these picks from happening? Like Yuumi destroyed us.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, do you remember the last time we played Yuumi?
Yeah, there was one Yuumi game and it was terrible.
It was atrocious.
It was absolutely
level
terrible.
1 death.
But both times we played Yuumi, and dude, it was so bad.
Yeah.
It was so bad for us. Like Yumi's just healing like crazy. It just makes people unkillable, you know. And not to mention the final chapter ult was like vicious. So there's like that. There's Galio, is a pick that I've seen in the other leagues, and it's clearly a thing. And then Niski just like, I mean, I can't say what he did on air because we're a family friendly stream, but it was bad. Corky the same way. Like these are champions that we're not playing nor banning, you know, and so I think part of that is champ pool, but part of that is like, man, why does it seem like everybody else finds those picks sooner than we do, and when we try them, they don't go like Kindred, man. We played Olaf into Kindred in game 1, and it was so bad for us, right? And then we turned around and we're like, okay, cool. Well, we'll take the Kindred counter to your Olaf. And I mean, it was blabber, but like still, it's like, dang, that went the polar opposite. Like, what is going on here where we just can't figure out like which champs we should play and how? I don't know. That feels like almost a thing to me too. I mean, you got to feel handcuffed by in some respects by the champ pool. Like Ryoma clearly doesn't have a huge champ pool. Stunt has a champ pool of 1. He has a champ puddle.
A champ drop.
A champ drop. A champ spill. Meteos too is tends to be pretty limited, right? Like it's like Rek'Sai or Olaf and Gragas, and that's about it, right? Dang, man. Is this meta? Is this champ pool? Is there more to it? What do you think?
I think a lot of it's champ pool, to be honest. Like the fact that, okay, our picks in order: Ornn, Ezreal, Olaf, Zoe, Nautilus. This is EG. The last pick was Nautilus, bro. The last pick was Nautilus. And it was second to last pick in the C9 game. So we're saving the last pick for Nautilus. You could first pick that. Like, nobody's surprised. Nobody's surprised. And nor do you, like, don't pretend that that's a counter. It's, if that's the only champ you're going to play and support, and we'll see what happens next week. But just, you know, like, you just type that into all chat, not, right? Before the game, before the draft starts, and then you're good. Or I guess if you're playing blind pick. So I think it's a champ pool thing primarily. And we saw what happened. We played Yuumi, dude. It was a disaster. It was so bad. It was so bad. Yeah. So, and I remember when we locked in Yuumi, and I was like, oh yeah, our turn for the unlimited heals and incredibly fast move speed. We got this. It's like we gave first blood over it 45 seconds.
Didn't work. Did not work.
Didn't work. So I put it on champ pool partially, man.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, like, you and I are, like, pretty much everybody in chat has been watching League longer than we have, right? When I came into the scene, like, I remember the first few times seeing people be like, this champ needs to be deleted. This is a terrible champ. And just being like, all right, guys, relax, you know? Like, okay, you need to calm down. But with Yuumi, I understand now. Like, with Yuumi, I'm totally there. Like, this champ is stupid. You just got to get rid of it. It was a cute idea. You guys did something new. Congrats, but it makes the game terrible. It just really does. I feel like all of our lives would be better without Yuumi, and especially the lives of 100 Thieves.
Yeah. After week 1. Yep. Can you imagine if it gets picked and beats us again week 2? Yeah. Oof, that's gonna be bad.
You're alluding to a listener take that I wanted to get to. Our old friend Leech Terrell on Twitter has been completely spot on with some of his takes from the games. And he made this observation a while ago, but he made it again this week, and I wanted to put it here. He said, 100 Thieves is probably the easiest team to prepare against. We've been picking the same champs for 3 splits. Almost always have our strongest player pick his champ first, allowing the enemy team to pick a favorable matchup top and mid. And that is like the most distilled version of like of what the problem is right now. Like, gosh, dang, man. Like, what do we do about this? Because I think he's right. Like, preparing against us must be super easy, and that's one of the bad things about being developmental, right? Is like if you're playing the same things to get it right, then you become very easy. Like there's not a whole lot of specific planning you need to do. There's not a lot of like crazy counter picks that you can pull out that will make people, reconsider what their initial strategy is going to be. I have a feeling like no one ever feels disrupted in their draft, by what we're doing. It's like, oh no, this is totally unexpected,
Right. It's tough, man. And I'm going to refrain from getting into like questioning strategic draft choices just because it's not my favorite thing to do, honestly.
Especially because we're idiots, right?
Yeah. Like I'm not a coach. And so I'm not going to try to, like, sometimes I'll see something happen in the draft. I'm like, that's questionable.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, I think that's right. I'm sure that the other teams, like, and here's the other thing. If as the enemy team, you have played and practiced against these champions a lot and you feel confident against them, like easiest ban phase of your life, right?
Yeah.
Let's say they get all of their comfort picks, everybody they'd like to get, and we're not at all concerned. Okay, fantastic. And by the way, if we let them get first pick Ornn, it actually means that we don't have to worry that our top laner is going to get absolutely demolished by Ssumday. Please have at it. Like, it's rough. It's rough, dude.
So, and I am acknowledging again that I am sure a healthy portion of this is feeling hamstrung by the players in which champions they can play and stuff. It's like, okay, if that is the case, that is the path that we've chosen by taking risks and playing developmental players and stuff like that, right? That's the path we're chosen. So if we want off that roller coaster ride, the answer may well be the players, right? So TikTok, man, clock is going now.
Right. Like, and maybe there's another way to look at this, which is when you pick and build a developmental team, does that change the way you need to approach the draft in general? Right. Like, should we be practicing on stage getting, I don't know, counter picks?
Excuse me.
Like, are we that limited that we can't, it kind of feels like we can't draft a favorable matchup, that's concerning.
Yeah.
Right. I think at this point in the experiment, in the project, you want to have arrived at the point where the last two picks you have saved for yourself generate some kind of advantage for you. And like I said, if it's Nautilus, it is not an advantaged pick at the end of the draft. It just isn't. So, Zoe, like, both games, mid support were the last two picks, mid support. So, like, we got to start seeing that either work more, where you get this comfort pick thing and they can kind of feel their way through the game, or you get them a counter pick and they actually have a chance to help you get an advantage. But I do think that has to start happening pretty quickly. And what I'd say, I'm going to re-hit some of the points I made. I think I'm at that point with Stunt where I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, if Ryoma continues this trajectory, like a downwards one, I'm going to have very, very real concerns as we get further into this split. Like, this needs to be a blip for him and not the way it's going now. And it needs to happen really quick.
Yeah. Well, trust the Papa, man. Trust the Papa is in its true test right now, right? What happens this split will determine a lot, I think, for the future 100 Thieves. Like, this is the completion of year 3. So, as I mentioned, our team identity will kind of be solidified by then. It's kind of already there in some ways, right? But I think by the end of this year, we'll know, like, basically if we're like the New York Knicks or not, And
I hope not.
the split will, like, matter in doing that. And yeah, I guess we'll just have to see what the staff does given the limited constraints that they're facing right now, in terms of travel, in terms of playing in person, in terms of what other talent is out there. Like we've always said, man, what a difficult puzzle to try and solve. So,
yep, it remains so.
Yeah, we'll just see what happens. All right, that's gonna do it for us, man. Unless you got something else, I don't want to despair too much because of week 1, but goodness gracious, at least the competition will probably get easier. I do think. Well, let's talk about that real quick. We have to address our upcoming games. So Saturday we play Team Liquid at 3:00 Central. I said this before. I think Liquid's gonna be really good, and I see them as better than EG. I see them as probably number 2. I think they're going to be a tough team. And so this will be I just feel like we're getting our difficult games like right off the bat. Jordan, predictions for this one.
1-1, lose TL. We beat IMT.
Yeah. So Immortals is the Sunday game. We play at 6:00 Central on Sunday. And I'm right with you. Immortals looks very bad. And like I said, we start off pretty well. It looks like to me. And so I don't think Immortals is a team that can really turn that against us. Like I think we'll have more confidence against Immortals. Maybe not having familiarity with who in the world they're playing on their team right now could be an issue, but I don't think so. I think we'll be able to dispatch with Immortals, but I do think we're going to go down to Liquid, who will prove to be, in my opinion, the number 2 team.
Yeah. If we lose to Immortals, this conversation starts changing very quickly.
Yeah.
Because that means we've actually lost ground from last split, right? Going 0-2 in the first 2 games, like it makes you think about the future.
Yeah.
Going 0-2 this weekend makes you think about right now. And
whoa, good quote. Fire emoji next to that.
There it is. We can't afford to, honestly, if we do that, then playoffs are a real concern. For me. Because that's the kind of team who you need them to finish below you in the table to make it the playoffs. This is one of those teams. And if they're going to beat you, you're playing with fire.
That's hilarious because you only need 2 teams to finish underneath you. But yeah, it's basically Immortals and Dignitas.
Yes.
Oh gosh. All right, guys. A chat's calling for me to get my jersey handy in case I need to go in and play for them.
If we lose to Immortals, Cole, you might get a call.
Yeah, I might get picked up. They said, "Hey, we really would like a silver ADC to role swap into our team."
You be wise to turn that offer down, Cole.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on the money. Let's talk, guys. Have your people talk to my people. On that note,
is
definitely the cue to get off the air. Guys, thanks for being here with us. It was a rough first weekend. I know it's tough to be optimistic right now. I'm having trouble being optimistic right now, but it's a long split. Last split, we saw definite improvement on the back half. Maybe, we can pull another one of those tricks out of our hat.
Should we raid somebody?
Oh, we should probably raid somebody. Yeah.
Stick around if you're in chat.
Yeah.
We raiding.
So here's what we'll do. We'll go ahead and give the old sign off, even though we won't actually end the Twitch stream. So, as always,
I'm definitely going to message you.
We love you and we miss you already.
Take care.
And now let's go raid somebody. Any suggestions right now? Ooh, let's do a raid. Let's do a raid. Flowers. Hotline League. Do you guys want to raid Hotline League? Yeah? All right, let's do it. Starting the raid. We'll see you guys in there. Love you. Bye.